America built some of the most legendary vacation destinations in the world, places that entire generations of families planned their summers around, saved up for, and drove hundreds of miles to reach. Some are still thriving, others, not so much. The decline isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's slow, structural, and easy to miss until you show up and notice what's missing. Here are 10 famous American vacation spots that are slowly being abandoned. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Once called America's playground, Atlantic City had everything. A world-famous boardwalk stretching more than 4 miles along the New Jersey shore. Grand hotels, saltwater taffy stands, rolling chairs pushed by attendants in white uniforms, and an energy that made it feel like the center of the East Coast entertainment universe for the better part of a century. Then things started slipping. Tourism began declining after World War II as Americans gained access to cars and airplanes and found other places to go. By the 1970s, parts of the city had deteriorated badly. The 1976 legalization of casino gambling was supposed to reverse all of that. For a while, it looked like it might. The first casinos opened in the late 70s, and there were crowds of people waiting to get into them, said Heather Perez, an archivist at the Atlantic City Free Public Library. The boardwalk was filled with these lines, and one by one, the casinos popped up along the beach. The gambling boom brought jobs, visitors, and an influx of money, but the benefits never spread far beyond the casino floors. The neighborhoods outside the casino corridors continued to struggle. Then, in the 2000s, competition arrived. Pennsylvania legalized gambling in 2006, and casinos started opening across the Northeast, taking away the geographic advantage that Atlantic City had held for decades. By 2014, 5 of Atlantic City's 12 casinos had closed, including the Trump Taj Mahal and the Revelle, the latter of which had cost $2.4 billion to build and went bankrupt after just 2 years of operation. Taxable gambling revenue collapsed from $20.5 billion in 2010 to $7.3 billion in 2015. Property values dropped, city services deteriorated, and Atlantic City nearly went bankrupt. The population has continued to decline. Today, walking through much of the city away from the casino strips means encountering blocks of boarded-up buildings, shuttered shops, and the kind of vacancy that doesn't suggest a temporary downturn. It suggests a structural one. The boardwalk still exists. A few casinos still operate. But what was once the East Coast's premier vacation destination is now, in the words of one longtime observer, a place that has been making mistakes for some 50 years. Revitalization efforts have been ongoing for years. A Stockton University satellite campus, a Hard Rock hotel and casino that opened in 2018, investment in the downtown core. But the fundamental challenge remains. Atlantic City bet everything on a single industry in a market that eventually got saturated, and the community outside the casinos never developed the kind of diversified tourism infrastructure that might have cushioned the fall. Niagara Falls, New York. Let's get this out of the way immediately. The falls themselves are still magnificent. One of the great natural spectacles on the continent, drawing millions of visitors to the New York-Ontario border every year, and capable of reducing even a seasoned traveler to slack-jawed silence. The problem is everything else on the American side. Niagara Falls, New York, the city adjacent to the state park, has been in a long, painful decline that has essentially nothing to do with the waterfall and everything to do with what happened to the industrial economy that once supported it. At its peak, the city had over 100,000 residents. Today, the population is below 50,000. 1 in 5 residents lives below the poverty line. 1/5 of housing lots are vacant or in disrepair. The city has frequently had the highest unemployment rate in New York State. The falls draw millions of visitors annually, but most of them visit the state park, look at the water, maybe take the Maid of the Mist boat tour, and then cross the Rainbow Bridge into Ontario, where the Canadian side has built a full resort city with hotels, restaurants, casinos, a Ferris wheel, and a complete tourist infrastructure that the American side never developed. After tourists and visitors leave the state park and see the mighty falls, as one local publication described it, there is not much else for them to see in the city, and they don't stay around long. The result is a destination where the natural wonder is world-class, and the surrounding city is a cautionary tale about what happens when heavy industry leaves and nothing coherent takes its place. Abandoned hotels, cracked sidewalks, vacant storefronts, not at the edge of the city, but within walking distance of one of the most photographed spots on Earth. The population, once over 100,000, has now fallen below 50,000. And in 2025, cross-border tourism to the American side took another hit as Canadian visitor return trips to the United States fell more than 25%, a sharp blow to a region that had always depended on the fluid movement of people across the Rainbow Bridge. What was once a honeymoon capital for generations of American couples now struggles to hold visitors long enough to matter economically. The falls still draw roughly 9.5 million visitors to the American side per year, but most of that foot traffic flows through the state park and straight back out. The city around it, the restaurants, the hotels, the businesses, captures only a fraction of what that volume of visitors could theoretically generate. It is, in a real sense, a destination where the main attraction and the surrounding community have almost completely decoupled from each other. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach is an interesting case because its problems aren't really about crime anymore, and the fact that people still think they are is itself one of its biggest problems. For years, the city carried a reputation so bad that it earned the nickname Murder Beach on social media. That reputation was grounded in real numbers. But here's what also happened. Between 2015 and 2024, violent crime in Myrtle Beach dropped nearly 47.5% from 4,909 reported incidents to 2,578. The police department invested in surveillance technology, acoustic gunshot detection systems, and community policing initiatives that genuinely moved the needle. By 2024, the city's crime rate was at a 6-year low. That's not a spin. That's a decade of sustained, documented improvement. The problem is that reputations, especially bad ones, travel faster and stick longer than the data that contradict them. Families who swore off Myrtle Beach after a 2019 headline haven't necessarily updated their assessment based on 2024 crime statistics. The Murder Beach label still circulates on Reddit in comment sections and in the casual shorthand people use when planning summer vacations. And no police chief's press release is going to reach all of those people. So what you end up with is a city that has done something genuinely difficult, substantially reduced crime over nearly a decade, but still bears the reputational cost of what it used to be. That gap between the place that actually exists and the place that lives in the cultural memory of potential visitors is where the real damage is being done, and there are legitimate ongoing concerns that have nothing to do with reputation. Beach erosion along the Grand Strand is persistent and costly. Short-term rental development has changed the character of residential areas. The built environment away from the resort strips features the particular kind of American commercial sprawl: aging strip malls, closing chain restaurants, half-empty parking lots that signals a place that grew fast and unevenly and is now managing the maintenance costs of that growth. The city's permanent population of around 35,000 people runs an economy built for millions of annual visitors, which creates structural instability when those visitors make other choices. Myrtle Beach isn't disappearing, but it's caught between a past it can't quite shake and a future it hasn't yet fully built. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Gatlinburg was supposed to be the quiet mountain town at the edge of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The place you stopped before or after your hike to get some fudge, maybe stay the night, breathe in the mountain air, and for a long time, that's what it was. The Smokies are still the most visited national park in the United States, drawing over 13 million visitors annually. That number has brought enormous amounts of money into the region. It has also brought traffic jams that stretch for miles, a main strip so dense with attractions, souvenir shops, pancake houses, escape rooms, and novelty restaurants that the mountains you came to see feel like a background detail, and a development pace that locals themselves have described as having gone well past the point of no return. Locals often say the focus has shifted away from the mountains themselves, is how one travel publication summed up the sentiment from residents. The town experience can feel crowded and commercialized, making it harder to find the quiet, nature-first atmosphere that once defined Gatlinburg's appeal. For visitors expecting an Appalachian mountain getaway, the reality of driving into Gatlinburg on a peak summer weekend, crawling through gridlock traffic on the parkway, looking for a parking spot that doesn't exist, surrounded by attractions that seem to have been designed by someone who had never actually been to the mountains, can be a shock. A 2016 wildfire, which killed 14 people and destroyed more than 2,400 structures, was a genuine tragedy for the community. The town rebuilt, which speaks to genuine resilience, but the rebuild happened largely in the same direction the town had already been heading. More development, more attractions, more traffic. By 2025, tourism tax data from the area showed the numbers essentially flat, with some officials attributing any softness primarily to economic uncertainty among middle-income families who make up the bulk of Smoky's visitors. Mostly it's about the economy more than anything, said Leon Downey, Pigeon Forge's director of tourism. They are concerned about the uncertainty of the economy, but we're flat basically in Pigeon Forge right now. Flat is the new good, apparently. The problem with Gatlinburg isn't that it has failed, it's that in succeeding so aggressively at becoming a mass tourism destination, it lost the thing that made people want to come in the first place. The mountains haven't changed. The town in front of them barely resembles what it used to be. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas recorded 38.5 million visitors in 2025, according to the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. That sounds like a lot, because it is, but it was the lowest annual total since 2010, outside of the COVID years. Overall visitation fell 7.5% in a single year. Hotel occupancy dropped more than 3 percentage points, down to 80.3% for the year. For a city where the entire economic model depends on volume, that kind of drop lands hard. Part of this was external and acute. Canadian visitors to Las Vegas declined approximately 20% in 2025, from 1.4 million visitors to significantly lower levels, as diplomatic tensions between the US and Canada reshaped where Canadians chose to spend their travel dollars. Airline capacity between Las Vegas and Canadian cities fell by roughly 35%, its lowest level since 2006. European visitors were tracking downward too for related reasons. But the international story, while real, obscures a longer-running domestic issue that Las Vegas created for itself. The city spent roughly a decade systematically pricing out the kind of visitor it was originally built for. The transformation happened gradually. Resort fees, daily charges layered on top of the room rate, became standard across virtually every strip property, adding $30 to $60 per night to stays that were already rising in base price. Parking, which was free at every major casino for decades, became paid at most properties. Entertainment costs climbed to where a single concert or residency show can run several $100s per person before drinks. Buffets, the institution that made Las Vegas famous as a place where ordinary people could feel like royalty for a weekend, mostly disappeared, replaced by celebrity chef restaurants at full celebrity chef prices. The cumulative effect is a city that used to welcome a gambler with $300 and send them home, having had a genuinely good time, but now extracts that $300 in fees and incidentals before the person even sits down at a table. In September 2025, Las Vegas ran its first ever citywide promotional sale specifically designed to win back visitors who had grown disillusioned with the cost of going. That a city which built its identity on the premise that the good times are always rolling needed to run a sale is, in itself, a statement. Branson, Missouri. Branson built its identity on country music, family entertainment, and affordability, and for decades, that formula worked. By 2022, the city had set a record of approximately 10.2 million visitors. The shows at Sight and Sound theaters, the rides at Silver Dollar City, the restaurants, it all held together remarkably well for a town of about 12,000 permanent residents trying to host millions of annual visitors. By 2024, the cracks were showing. The city's annual tourism tax revenue fell 2.5% in 2024 compared to 2023, ending a run of consecutive years at or above prior records. Theater revenues, the historically strongest category and the core of Branson's identity, fell 9.9% for the year. January 2025 saw the city's 1% sales tax decline, 11.5% from January 2024. The deeper problem in Branson isn't a sudden drop in visitors, it's the structural fragility of a town whose economy revolves almost entirely around a single type of entertainment for a narrowing demographic. The average Branson visitor is historically drawn from within 300 miles and skews older. As that core audience ages and the next generation shows less interest in live country music theater, the theater category specifically was down 9.9% in 2024 and down further in early 2025. The pipeline of new visitors has struggled to keep pace. The shows that filled 46 theaters for decades are finding that the audiences for that specific format aren't being replaced at the same rate they're aging out. A city that built its identity on a particular kind of entertainment is discovering what happens when that entertainment stops being the automatic default choice for a broad portion of the American vacation market. And then there's the off-season reality that rarely makes it into the tourism brochures. When the season ends, Branson essentially shuts down. Right now is the height of our season at Christian Action Ministries, dealing with food insecurity, as one local nonprofit director described it each winter. Branson faces low-paying wages, seasonal unemployment, no reliable public transportation, and a shortage of about 1,300 affordable housing units. During the peak summer months, some food banks in the area serve around 100 households a day. When the tourists leave and winter settles in, that number climbs to 150 in a city of roughly 12,000 permanent residents. It's a perfect storm of tourism and poverty, as one local community leader put it, a place that looks prosperous during summer and feels hollowed out once the visitors leave. Miami Beach, Florida. Miami Beach, South Beach in particular, has been one of the most photographed vacation destinations in the country since at least the 1980s. The Art Deco architecture, the turquoise water, the nightlife, the energy. For decades, it drew an international crowd unlike almost anywhere else in America. But 2025 brought a sharp decline in the international visitors who had historically made up a significant share of Miami's tourism economy. Canadian arrivals to Miami dropped sharply by estimates ranging from 13 to 21% depending on the month, as trade tensions and political friction redirected Canadian travel away from U.S. destinations. Florida overall saw Canadian visitation fall about 15.5% in the first 9 months of 2025. The issues in Miami Beach go deeper than one bad year for Canadian tourism, though. The city has been wrestling for years with severe spring break overcrowding, to the point that South Beach implemented a midnight curfew and restricted alcohol sales on the beach after years of increasingly violent incidents during peak spring break weekends. The city's attempts to manage this population of visitors have in turn frustrated the nightlife businesses that depend on late-night revenue. Miami Beach is also, more acutely than almost any developed coastal city in the United States, on the front lines of sea level rise and chronic flooding. Streets in parts of South Beach flood at high tide even without rain, a phenomenon that has become so routine that the city has spent over $600 million on pump systems and raised roadways to manage what locals have taken to calling sunny day flooding. The situation is expected to worsen, and no amount of Art Deco charm makes standing in 6 inches of seawater on a sunny afternoon feel like a vacation. Miami Beach has issued over $1.5 billion in bonds for sea level rise adaptation projects, and engineers estimate the city will need to raise roads and infrastructure across vast stretches of the island over the coming decades, a construction timeline that will itself reshape the visitor experience for years. For a city whose entire brand is built on glamour and effortless beauty, the unglamorous reality of managing a sinking coastline is a tension that isn't going away. Sedona, Arizona. Sedona didn't decline because it failed. It declined because it succeeded completely and without restraint, and nobody put a ceiling on what that success was allowed to cost. The red rock formations, the vortex sites, the spiritual retreat culture, the galleries, and the spa weekends. Sedona built a reputation over decades as a place that offered something genuinely rare in the American Southwest. Natural beauty so extreme it felt almost deliberate, combined with a small-town atmosphere that made the whole thing feel accessible. People came, told others, came back. The word spread. Social media arrived and put the place on a global map it had never asked to be on. Today, Sedona draws more than 3 million visitors per year to a permanent population of just under 10,000 people. That's roughly 300 visitors for every resident. On peak spring weekends, Cathedral Rock and Bell Rock trailheads fill before sunrise. The roads into the Red Rocks gridlock for hours in the middle of the morning. The Forest Service has implemented parking reservation systems at the most overwhelmed sites, not because they want to control access, but because the alternative is people parking illegally along highway shoulders and hiking in through active traffic. The housing picture is where the real damage is. Short-term vacation rentals have consumed approximately 12% of Sedona's total housing stock. The people who staff the hotels, cook in the restaurants, lead the yoga retreats, and maintain the trails can no longer afford to live in the town their labor makes functional. They commute in from Cottonwood or Camp Verde, half an hour away, which means they're not embedded in the community, they're servicing it. That distinction matters for the character of a place. What Sedona sold was solitude, spiritual renewal, and the feeling of being somewhere genuinely beautiful without the machinery of mass tourism pressing in on every side. The irony is that the more people heard that message and believed it, the more thoroughly the thing being sold was destroyed in the selling. A 2022 resident sentiment survey found that 80% of Sedona respondents wanted the town to focus on managing existing tourism rather than growing it further. The town's own residents were, in effect, asking for their city back. The shuttle systems and timed permits and reservation requirements that have followed since are the administrative equivalent of closing the barn door, necessary and probably too late to undo what has already happened to the community underneath the scenery. Florida Keys? The Florida Keys are one of the genuinely singular places in the United States, a string of islands connected by the Overseas Highway, surrounded by shallow turquoise water, home to some of the best diving and snorkeling in the country, and possessing a culture and atmosphere that doesn't quite exist anywhere else in America. They are also eroding, flooding, and becoming progressively harder for anyone except the wealthy to access. Hurricane Irma in 2017 was a devastating blow that destroyed or severely damaged tens of thousands of structures throughout the Keys. The recovery was slow and uneven, and the reconstruction costs drove property values and rental prices to levels that have made long-term residency increasingly difficult for working-class islanders. Teachers, restaurant workers, and service employees who work in Key West and the surrounding islands frequently commute from as far away as Homestead on the mainland, a round trip of over 80 miles. because they can no longer afford to live where they work. The coral reef system that made the Keys famous is under severe pressure. Florida's coral reef, part of the third largest barrier reef system in the world, has lost over 90% of its coral cover since the 1970s due to warming ocean temperatures, disease outbreaks, and water quality issues. The 2023 marine heat wave in Florida Bay saw water temperatures reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, almost certainly a world record for ocean water, causing mass coral bleaching events that took years of reef recovery with them. For visitors who come to the Keys specifically to snorkel or dive the reef, the experience has changed significantly from what guidebooks and travel brochures still describe. The fish are still there. The scenery is still extraordinary, but the reef itself, the reason the Keys developed as a vacation destination in the first place, is in a state of crisis. And the economics of visiting the Keys have shifted so dramatically since Hurricane Irma that a week in Key West, once a funky, affordable alternative to more polished Florida destinations, now costs roughly as much as a comparable trip to the Caribbean. Without the Caribbean's intact reefs, the workers who make the Keys function for visitors are commuting hours each day because the islands no longer have room for anyone who doesn't make six figures or own property outright. That's a dynamic that tends to hollow out the character of a place faster than almost anything else can. Galveston, Texas. The seawall is the key to understanding Galveston. After the 1900 hurricane, still the deadliest natural disaster in United States history, killing more than 8,000 people, the city made a collective decision to stay. It raised the grade of the island, dredging sand to elevate the entire landmass, and built a 17-foot seawall along the Gulf side. It was one of the great engineering achievements of its era, and it gave Galveston a second life. What it also gave Galveston was a confidence in its own permanence that the geography of a narrow barrier island off the Texas coast probably doesn't fully warrant. The seawall protects the beach-facing side. It does not protect the bay side, where most flooding from major storms actually enters. It covers a portion of the shoreline. It is aging infrastructure in an era of rising seas and intensifying Gulf storms. And it encouraged decades of development: Victorian homes, resort hotels, the historic Strand District, on a piece of land that the Gulf of Mexico is slowly, measurably reclaiming. The island draws more than 8 million visitors per year, the overwhelming majority of them day trippers from the Houston metro area who come for the beach, eat lunch, and leave before dinner. That pattern is the economy's other structural problem. Day trippers spend less per visit than overnight guests, generate enormous wear on roads, parking, and beach infrastructure, and then leave, taking their wallets with them. The businesses and workers who keep Galveston running for those 8 million annual visitors are doing so in a seasonal economy that goes quiet enough in winter that food banks see measurably higher demand. Workers in hospitality and tourism face months each year without reliable income in a city where the cost of housing has risen sharply since Hurricane Harvey in 2017 accelerated both the displacement of longtime residents and the influx of post-storm investment. The physical infrastructure away from the tourist-facing Strand and seawall areas reflects years of deferred maintenance on a seasonal budget, and the long-term question, whether Galveston as a developed community is sustainable against the combination of sea level rise, aging flood protection, and the increasing intensity of Gulf storms, is one that engineers and climate scientists have been raising with more urgency for years. The island has survived before. The seawall has held, but the version of Galveston that exists today is built on a foundation that keeps asking to be taken on faith. And faith in barrier islands is a resource that climate change is steadily drawing down. Some of these places are fighting back. Some are reinventing themselves. and some are genuinely fading in ways that will be hard to reverse. What they all have in common is that the version of them that exists in the popular imagination, the postcard, the travel brochure, the memory from a childhood trip, often doesn't match what you'll find if you show up today. America's vacation landscape has always evolved. Destinations rise, peak, and sometimes fall into something unrecognizable. The places on this list are at various points along that arc, and where they end up will depend as much on the decisions made by local governments, developers, and policymakers over the next decade as on any single external force. If you found this video worth your time, hit like and subscribe. There's plenty more to explore.